theyeshiva.net.
So, welcome everybody and good morning. The last shiur, yesterday's shiur, was some very fundamental ideas. Those who didn't hear it, it's kedai to listen to it. And if you heard it once, you can hear it also a second time and maybe even a third time or more, and try to internalize it, think about it, and absorb it. That was a follow-up to the previous two. So the last three, which explored some of the ramifications of tzimtzum shaloi k'pshutai, are very powerful and fundamental, with quite many ramifications in terms of Yiddishkeit and life and avodas Hashem and hashkafa and so forth. Just to give a clarification on something, which I'm not going to elaborate on, because that's another 10 classes. I've mentioned a few shiurim ago that in the sugya of tzimtzum there were 4 opinions. I should say there are 4. There were over the course of generations 4 opinions. Generally 4 opinions. In different extremes. One opinion, and basically the 4 opinions deal with 2 different aspects. As the Mishnah would say, shtayim, shehein arba. Terminology of Chassidus, it's called Oir versus Moyer. Oir means light. Moyer means the source of light, the luminary. Like the Moyer, the source of light. In our case, we're talking about the Oir of the Ein Sof, the light of Hashem, so to speak, obviously metaphorically speaking, and the Ein Sof himself, Hashem himself. Oir, light, denotes that which can be experienced on some level. The concept of light is, it illuminates the room that it's in, the environment it's in. In other words, it brings things to light. It reveals. The function of light is not to create a new entity. If a room is dark or a room is light, everything in the room remains the same. But a bright room allows you to perceive, to see. When it's dark outside, you're walking on the same streets. But if there's a ditch, one can't notice it. Light allows you to see, to perceive the reality. Light itself represents not the source of the light, but that which travels from the source of light. Like from the sun, the light of the sun or the light of the moon or light of any star or any source of light. As we know, the speed of light is crazy. It's insane, 186,000 miles per second, I believe. There's nothing that has a similar speed that we're familiar with. And it represents the journey from the source, from the Moyer, out of it to bring the light into another domain. So the light of the sun allows our planet to have heat, to have warmth, to have growth, to have light. Without it, we would die. We wouldn't be able to survive. And that's the function of the light that comes from the source. It brings it into another place, into another experience. And then there's the source of light itself. The argument in tzimtzum was about both situations. The Moyer, the source, so to speak, Hashem himself, what we call atzmus, the essence, and also about the Oir, which is the experience of the divine, the light of the divine. Or if you want to use different type of language, it would be, the Oir would be conscious. It would be the way things are experienced consciously. That's what light means. Light means it comes to the fore, it comes out. Above Oir, that which is there, but it's unconscious. The fact that it's unconscious doesn't mean it's not there. As we know, what is unconscious is more powerful than what is conscious, primarily because it's not conscious. It doesn't have to limit itself. Things that are conscious are already have to go through their own symptom, but in order to become conscious, in order for you to be able to feel them. Things that are unconscious could just be and then float around without anybody disturbing them. So the fact that something is unconscious doesn't mean it's less there. It just means it's more there. You just don't know about it. In fact, it may define one much more than anything else, as we know today in so many illustrations and examples of lives. I'm just using Oir would remain the conscious experience, if we wish. And then there's above it, which is fully there, but it's unconscious. The essence is there, but it's not necessarily conscious. Not because it's not there, because it's there in a more powerful way, and it's beyond what the senses of experience, what the detectors of experience can detect. I'm saying this very, very briefly, just to give a little bit of a fuller picture. The arguments about Tzimtzum operated on both levels. Both. It was an argument both in Oir and in Moyer. The question of what the Arizal meant, the doctrine of Tzimtzum, that the Arizal postulated in Teres Kabbalah's Hari, operated on two different levels. There's four opinions, but I guess Shtayim Shein Arba. First I'll say the way it's in Moyer, and then the way it's in Oir, the way it's in the source, and the way it's in Oir Insof. In Moyer, the question was if the Tzimtzum was in the Moyer or not. In other words, can one say that Tzimtzum actually means that God withdrew from the world? From the worlds. He supervises it, he's still the boss, but he's not present. That was an opinion. It's not a known opinion today anymore, because it's not been discussed, it's not taken root in the consciousness of Knesset Yisrael today, but it's a view of some of great Kabbalists, that the Tzimtzum Kipshutai literal is in the Ein Sof himself, in Atzmos itself. Ad Kedei Kach, one of the great Mekabalim, I mentioned Rabbi Amnuel Chayriki, the author of Mishnah's Chassidim and Yoshel Lavav, says it's disrespectful for a king to hang out in Beis HaKiseis, in places of zevel, of ashpa, of filth and dirt. In fact, for some of them, this was fundamental to Jewish faith. To say that God was in the Beis HaKisei, where you're not allowed to learn Torah, where you're not allowed to have machshavos of Kedusha, right? Place of Tumah, they felt is actually disrespectful. So every Jewish child today will say Hashem is everywhere. Hashem is everywhere. He's anywhere in the world. Fine. But I'm explaining to you that this is an opinion that Tzimtzum was in the Moyer itself. Okay. Or you could say, no. That's not the case. That's an argument about Moyer.
Those how Tzimtzum and Moyer also was Tzimtzum? Can you say that?
That for sure. In the Oyer, for sure, there was a Tzimtzum. The question now in Oyer is also, was it Kipshuta in Oyer or Shaloi Kipshuta?
Why did it say you could say Tzimtzum in the
In other words, in the Oyer of Ein Sof, the Oyer is not the Ein Sof himself. It's the expression, the light, the experience of infinity. The Oyer of Ein Sof, there was a Tzimtzum there, obviously. How could there be an expression of Ein Sof in the presence of the world, as we've been explaining? This Maamar is focusing on the issue of Oyer, the debate of Oyer, not another issue. Everything we've been talking about, if you'll notice, is about the Oyer, is about the experience of Ein Sof. I'm pointing that out. Our whole discussion of Tzimtzum Shalei Kipshutai, we're dealing with Oyer. There's a whole other question about Tzimtzum in the Atzmos itself. So one opinion is, the most extreme opinion is, that there was for sure Tzimtzum in the Oyer, and that Tzimtzum is Kipshutai. Kipshutai means that the Ein Sof is not present in the limited world, the Oyer Ein Sof. In Atzmos himself, there was also Tzimtzum. That's one view. Another view is, in the second view, Wer will etwas fragen? Can't fragen.
No, the Ruf said in one of the speeches of Amunah, I think, that Hashem goes to the Schutz in the Musiki to take his advice. That means the Habishter goes.
Zoya Parshas B'chukoisai. Zoya Parshas B'chukoisai.
The moment that Hashem goes to the dark.
Das ist a Zoya. A Zoya Parshas. Loi ma'astem v'loi ga'altem, yeah? V'avgam zoyis b'yoysem b'eretz eveim loi ma'astem v'loi ga'altem l'chaloysem. Even when they're the land of their enemies, I'm not repulsed by them to eliminate them. So the Zoya says l'chaloysem could be pronounced l'kalosem. Marshal to a chassan that his wife is Kala, is in a Shukah de Bursiki, in a marketplace of Bursiki. Bursiki is where they had tanning, and the smells, the odors there were noxious, were horrible, worse smell than any other environment. That's just the nature of the work. But his Kala was there, and he was a beautiful chassan. His reyach, his aroma was extraordinary. He was elegant, he was refined, but because he knows that his bride is there, So he goes into that place. So he says, Avgam zois beyoisem be'etzeveyim le ma'astim v'loi ga'altim lechaloisam. So the Zohar says lechalosam, because the kala is there. Yeah. Okay, listen, on a literal level, it's an endorsement. Yeah, the Gemara also says that b'chol makom shegoli Yisrael shchina imaham. And ima yanayche b'tzara. What does shchina mean? Shchina comes from the word v'shachanti. Shchina is the kav. Shchina is the oir. Is it after tzimtzum? It's perhaps post tzimtzum. All the psukim, everyone explains it according to a general shit. It also says, it's kvoidai. Some say kvoidai means not him, his hashgacha, his supervision. I could be in the palace and look out the window and see what's happening everywhere, and I could control it too. But I'm not there. Now obviously you have to understand what that means, because we're not dealing with physical realities. Verstehst du, was ich sag? There's a letter from the Lubavitcher Rebbe to somebody in the 1930s. I want to see if I could pull it up. He discusses there, I told you Rav Dessler held that there was, Rav Dessler was from the big Chachmei Amusa, Gateshead, and then Eretz Yisrael, Michtav Meliyo. So he tried to say that there's no machloikus about Tzimtzum. Everybody really says the same thing. And a lot of his Talmidim quote him today also. Rav Dessler passed away in the early 1950s. Rav Moshe Shapiro, Zechron Levracha, was from the big Bali Machshava in the literature world in Eretz Yisrael. And I met him a few months before he passed away. He was here for treatments. And I asked him, so he started to laugh, he said, Sigavena Machloikas, Sigavena Grace Machloikas. The set of Igris of the Lubavitcher Rebbe letters, there's like 35 volumes today, or I don't know how many volumes, 35, 36 volumes. They're still not finished. So the first volume has a letter from 1939, Yudalit Shevat, Tofrish Tzadik Tes, Paris, written from Paris, to a Jew named Rabbi Rachmiel Binyaminson, who was a Rav, a Dayan. He was a famous Dayan in London. And so the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was then, his father-in-law was alive, so he was known as the son-in-law of his father-in-law of the Rayats, writes him a letter, and he says, you write to me about Tzimtzum, that one of your friends, one of the people you know, says that all the shittas really follow the same pattern. So he says, Nifleisi beyoser gamal kasol kadaitach kaza. I was quite astonished even of the thought. Ubefrat hasher kvay teirasai mechaneu b'michtavai b'shem loimet sifri ha-mekubalim. Especially that you're telling me that this person, I don't know if he told him the name or not, is somebody who learns Kabbalah. Kipshita she'ene kein klal klal. It's obvious that's not the case. V'oid b'doir harishon she'acher ha'arizal. Already in the first generation after the Arizal, shehu gila lanu soid hatzimtzum. He is the one who revealed the secret of the tzimtzum. Haya be'inyin hatzimtzum chilukei deyes ben bali trisen min hakotza el hakotza. Kinide b'sifreim v'nimshucha machloikas gam achakach. Already in the first generation, between great sages, there were great debates on tzimtzum from one extreme to another extreme, as one could see in all of their books, and the debate continues in subsequent generations. V'hu b'shnei inyanim ikrim. And the argument, such a summation, is very rare to get. In two, it's like just a clarification of the whole picture. The debate is two major issues. Im hatzimtzum hu kipshutay oiloi. If tzimtzum is literal or not, meaning siluk oihelam. Is it only concealment or is it departure? Did God remove or did he just conceal? Kipshutay would mean removed. Shaloi kipshutay means you could think it's removed, but it's really not removed. Number two, if this tzimtzum, which in itself could be understood in two ways, is in the oyer, also in the moyer. Four views are possible. Aleph, tzimtzum kipshutei v'gam ba'atzmusai. That's the most extreme in one direction. The tzimtzum is literal, meaning there was a removal of the Ein Sof, and not only in the oyer, but also in the atzmus. That's the most extreme in one direction. V'rayas hasayrim came their proof. How could you say that the king is in the place of filth and dirt? Chas v'shalom. Beis, second opinion. Tzimtzum kipshutoi avorak ba'oyer. The tzimtzum is literal, but only in the oyer. In the oyer, you say that the tzimtzum is kipshutoi. What about the moyer? What about the moyer? Over there, you'll say there was no tzimtzum b'chlal. The Arizal was never talking about the moyer. Okay, so the first opinion is he was talking about everything. He was talking about oir, he was talking about moyer, and in everywhere there's a tzimtzum and it's kipshutai. And a little ray of light created the worlds. And of course, God is in charge, no question. He gave Torah, he gave mitzvahs, nobody's arguing about that. You're telling here about Jewish sages, about great Mekabalah. The second opinion is, in Atzmos there was no tzimtzum, he's talking about oir, but it's literal. Oir Ein Sof is not present, it can't be. View number 3, tzimtzum is shaloi kipshutai, but also in the moyer. Even in the moyer, but it's shaloi kipshutai. Okay? That's a third opinion. So the tzimtzum is in the oyer and in the moyer, but it's not literal, it's just perceived that way. There's a concealment. That's the third opinion. So opinion number 1 is, there's a tzimtzum in everything, and it's kipshutai. That's number 1. Oyer and moyer. As we said, the machlokes deals with 2 things. If it's kipshutai or not kipshutai, if it's in oyer or also in moyer. The first opinion takes the extreme of both sides. It's also in the moyer and in the oyer, and it's kipshutai. So in both questions, right, it goes to an extreme level. That's why it says ben hakotza lakotza. It's a kipshutai, and it's in the moyer. That's A. Opinion number 2 is, no. In oyer, they take the more extreme view, meaning extreme, I mean extreme, more tzimtzum, not, that's what I mean extreme. I don't mean chumrah and kula in terms of halach. Extreme more that the tzimtzum is more stringent, it's more serious. You have to take it more serious. So the second view says, atzmos not, that's not what we're addressing, but in oyer there was a tzimtzum kipshutai, real tzimtzum. That would mean, if you want to say, unconsciously God is here. But in terms of oyer, the Ein Sof is not present. It can't be manifested. It can't be light. The light of Ein Sof is not present. The third opinion is that tzimtzum is not kipshutai. So on one of the 2 questions, it's much lighter because tzimtzum, but it's also in the moyer. So basically, it's more lenient than the second, but also more stringent than the second. Because the second says in Atzmos there was no tzimtzum, but in oyer there was a tzimtzum kipshutai. And the third says there was a tzimtzum shaloi kipshutai in oyer and in moyer. So in one level it's much more lenient because it wasn't kipshutai, but the tzimtzum was also in Atzmos, but not kipshutai. The fourth opinion is tzimtzum is not kipshutai and only in oyer. Meaning in Atzmos there was bechlal no. So in both questions it takes the most lenient. In Atzmos there was bechlal no tzimtzum. Not hell, not kipshutai, not shaloi kipshutai. The whole tzimtzum doesn't apply to Atzmos. The Arizah was only talking about oyer, which was also the second opinion, also like that. But the second opinion says that oyer is kipshutai. And the fourth opinion says there was b'chal and atzmos, there was no tzimtzum. And even in oyer, it was shaloi kipshutai. The Arizal didn't mean it literal. So to summarize, opinion number 1 is, in the question of oyer and moyer, right? It was both oyer and moyer. In the question of kipshutai, shaloi kipshutai, it was kipshutai on both levels. That's one. You have the opposite extreme. In the question of oyer and moyer, it was only oyer and not moyer. And in the question of kipshutai, shaloi kipshutai, it was shaloi kipshutai. And even that only in oyer. So that's the two extremes. Then you have in the middle, 2 shittas in the middle. Shitta number 2 is, in Atzmos there was taka, no tzimtzum. So in that, it's like number 4, right? The more lenient one. But on the other hand, in the question of kipshutai, shaloi kipshutai, it takes the first opinion and says the tzimtzum was kipshutai. And you have a third opinion, which again takes a chumrah and a kula. On one level, it takes the kula because it says everything is shaloi kipshutai. So it takes the kula of the fourth one, which says it's shaloi kipshutai. On the other hand, it takes the chumrah of the first one because it says it's also in the moyer, it's also in atzmos, but it's shaloi kipshutai. Those are the 4 opinions. The Lubavitcher Rebbe continues, and he says, "Hamisnagdim b'mei admur azokin ochazu b'shita alef hanal ki yadua." Some opponents to the world of Chassidus in the times of the Balatanya maintained the first shita as is known. V'hoyim mefarshim, when he says known doesn't mean hearsay. Known in the Svarim. V'hoyim mefarshim leis asar ponim inei hainu mashgachasa. When it says in Zohar, no place is devoid of him, how could you argue? They didn't argue with the Zohar. It means from his providence, from his ashgacha. Minei doesn't mean from him his essence. It means from his, he's still the balabas, he's still the boss. V'amru, and they said, Asher ashita da atzmus nimtza b'chal mokum hisayseres ledinim de mevoyas hamatonofas v'chuli v'chuli. They felt that the meshita, that atzmus is everywhere, contradicts all the halachas about dirty alleyways. All the halachas in Hilchas Krishma and Hilchas Tefillah about mevoyas. Mevoyas means alleyways, places that are metunaf, that are full of tinif, of dirt. All those halachas would be undermined by the first idea, by the idea of the fourth shitta, or the idea of the second shitta even, that atzmus is everywhere. V'chuli v'chuli, and similar halachas. This is expressed in the kruzim. The kruzim are the announcements, declarations, and notifications that they sent out during the time of the Baal Shem Tov and the Baal HaTanya, which many of them have been replicated in print by historians. All of the arguments that they had, and you see in those arguments that they have tremendous difficulty accepting the idea that God is everywhere. They feel that it undermines a lot of Yiddishkeit. And that's why the Baal HaTanya responds to these views in Tanya, in Shara Yichud chapter 7, and Geras HaKodesh chapter 25, where he addresses it. I think he says that in Beis Rebbe, which is a biography book, there's a letter from the Baal HaTanya about this, which the Rebbe thinks, but that's the case, a very long letter where he explains the various, what he was told, and they shared with him the opposition to his view. The Baal HaTanya.
Who writes
The Lubavitcher Rebbe writes in this letter.
That's the base.
Rebbe was written by a Yid, his name was Chaim Hillman. Rabbi Hillman, he wrote a biography, an authoritative biography about the Alter Rebbe called Beis Rebbe. Shitas Baal HaMechaber Sefer Nefesh HaChaim Shemasker Kvoi Teirase B'Mechtavai Hu Keshita Gimel Hanal. The view of the author of Nefesh HaChaim, Reb Chaim Volozhiner, which you mention in your letter, is like the third view. The third view is, remember, that Tzimtzum is Shaloi Kipshutai. It's not literal, but it's also in the Moyer. That's the shit of the Nefesh HaChaim. The Nefesh HaChaim dedicates a section of his book on the Sugya of Tzimtzum, and that's his opinion. V'cholak bozeh al Rabbi Hagra. And in this, he argued with his own teacher, the Vilna Gaon. Ubechlal, nire, shera ha-Reb Chaim Volozhin Sifrei Chabad, ubefrat Sefer Atanya, v'nishpa mehem, af she'eni yedei ze b'hoichachas Gemuras. It seems that Reb Chaim Volozhiner has seen the works of Chassidus Chabad, especially Tanya, and has been influenced by them. Although I cannot prove it with complete proofs. I cannot authenticate this as an absolute proof. He says, Aval anu ein lanu ela keshita dalad hanal, she'ein hatzimtzum kipshutoi, v'gam ze loy b'moyer ala ba'or, v'rak b'bchina hatachtoyna shabar shalifnei hatzimtzum, k'mavur b'sifri v'kisvei Chabad. The shit of the Baal HaTanya, based on the Baal Shem Tov, is the fourth shitta. What's the fourth shitta? That the tzimtzum b'chlal is never kipshuta. Whenever you talk about tzimtzum, it's not literal. And even the tzimtzum that's not literal is only in the oir and never in the mor. In the mor there was b'chlal no tzimtzum. Again, it's similar to the second shitta in terms that there was no tzimtzum in the mor, but it argues with the second shitta because in the second shitta the tzimtzum in oir is kipshuta, and in the fourth shitta it takes the leniencies of both. B'chlal in mor there was no tzimtzum whatsoever. So there's nothing to talk about. The Rizal wasn't addressing Moyer. Over there was no tzimtzum. As in Chabad they explain in Atzmus you can't even have tzimtzum. The concept of tzimtzum can't apply there, according to this view. And even in the Oyer, where there was a tzimtzum, that nobody argues. The Rizal says the Oyer in Sof was mitzamtzum himself, and all of the Mekabalim and the Chassidim, both camps, the Litvish, the Chassidim, everybody accepted the Rizal, but it's only in the Oyer. And even in the oir, it's shaloi kipshutai. And he adds, and even in the oir, it's the lowest level of oir before tzimtzum, because in oir itself is not so. What oir is itself, there's many madregas. He says, "B'yameinu, and in our days that we were zoicha to the light, that the mesechta of tzimtzum has been explained by Arichas in Sifrei Torahs Chassidus Chabad, those in print and those that are written, still 1939. So whoever wants to understand tzimtzum at least on some level, if they want to really understand it, ein lezaderech acher ela la'ayin bahanal. There's only one way by getting into this in these svarim, and if you want to prove to what I'm saying, is just compare what is discussed about Tzimtzum and other svarim, because many of them did not want to get into the details for various reasons. This was not something comfortable to talk about, versus Sifrei Chabad. I don't know if you have these svarim, but I'm going to point out to you a few of the major drushim, and he gives a list of it. He gives a list.
Here's number 2.
He doesn't emphasize. Number 1 is the Vilna Gaon, already before the Vilna Gaon, but also the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon has a pirush on Zohar there's a section of Zohar called Sifrei Tzniusa. The Vilna Gaon has a pirush on it, very, very deep, very complex. At the end of that, there are called Likutim, and over there the Vilna Gaon maintains the first view. And as he says in Vilna, many of the announcements about Chassidim and Chassidus Baal Shem Tov emphasized that view. Not only that, if I'm not mistaken, the Rebbe added in this letter something else, although I don't see it here, I don't know why. If I'm not mistaken, when I saw the letter many years ago, he added that they burnt, in Vilna they burnt Tzavas or Rivash, a sefer from the Baal Shem Tov, because of this. Baal Shem Tov said something like this, and they burnt a book because of this. Of this shitta. That Atzmus verkehrt. Shit of the Baal Shem Tov, and not in the Maamar. And the Maamar was B'chal no Tzimtzum. Yeah, I thought he added that in the letter, unless I'm mistaken. But I see it's not in this version, at least that I have. I have to look in the original, because I saw a copy of the Ksav Yad many years ago. That's what I thought, but maybe not. But it says that's how deep it was. They felt it was heresy. It was apikoursis.
If it's only in R, what's the difference between Pshit and Pshit?
Oh, so that's what I wanted to bring out. This Maamar that we're learning now is talking only about Oir. He's not dealing with the other issue. The other issue has other ramifications. The question in Oir is the questions we have been dealing with in the previous shiurim. And that question is, if you say Tzimtzum Kipshuta in Oir, it would mean on a practical level. What would it mean on a practical level? Now you really have to understand what l'may nafka mina these 4 shittas. In other words,
also from our perception,
what's the difference? Everybody holds that God exists. Everybody holds that in the morning you have to wake up and learn and Torah and daven, etc. That's not a question. Again, you're dealing with G'dolei Yisrael. You're not dealing here with tzdukim, with baitusim, with kroyim, with reformers. That's not what you were dealing here with. We're dealing here with authentic Bali Treisen, as he puts it. Bali Treisen means, as we would say, the big league. The giants, yeah. We have in Tisha B'Av Kinnas, Arze Halavonen, Adire HaTorah, Bali Treisen, B'Mishnah, B'Gemara, big people. But the truth is, like in every sugya in Pnimiyus HaTorah, there are many ramifications. In other words, every shitta trickles down. What does it look like? Sometimes the differences are very subtle, but they're very, very deep. What we have been addressing is the ramifications of the question of Oir, if it's Kipshuta, Shalai Kipshuta. If it's Kipshuta, it means ultimately the finite world is not a place where you're going to find truth. And therefore you have to ultimately disconnect as much as possible. When I asked Rav Moshe Shapiro, who came again from the Litvische world, he was by Rav Dessler. He told me that. And he used to give shiurim and Sifrei Hagra a lot. Maharal, the Gra, Reb Tzaddik. But his Kabbalah he always developed was Shittas Hagra, although he was quite influenced by Likutei Torah and Torah, as he told me himself, how much he learns it. So I asked him from his perspective, what's the difference between the two views? And he maintained this point, which is a critical point. If
Two views doesn't the top polar
we didn't get into that, but just the question generally of Kipshuta Shalai Kipshuta, which really applies more to Oir in this context. It's basically if ultimate Yiddishkeit is about bittul or tikkun, in one word. If it's ultimately about escaping the world or elevating the world. And it will trickle down in thousands of examples, but that's the real key. If the world is ultimately a place to run from, or it's the place where everything happens, everything good happens. Is the ultimate calling bittul? Bittul, I mean disassociation, precious, asceticism, or tikkun. If the guf, if the body is ultimately something that can be saintly, divine, or no, it will always remain, second tier, and at best you have to indulge it. The question is, ultimately, if you say tzimtzum kipshutai, that means the finite world is a place where the Ein Sof can't dwell. You can't have it both ways. If you say tzimtzum shaloi kipshutai, it means the finite is only a mashal for infinity. So that changes the whole perception. 1 second, what?
Why can't you have bittul and peace at the same time? The greatest we can be bittul.
That's why I translated bittul not as bittul regular. Bittul I meant as precious, as disassociation, to be mevatel, to obliterate the world, versus tikkun. If the guf ultimately, and everything the guf represents, I don't only mean the guf, the physical, is tolerable, or no, that's where you can have everything. If you're just megala the Ein Sof, then the limit itself is really a vehicle for the Ein Sof. It's not a contradiction.
They have to make it so complicated. Like it seems like we do Yom Kippur, so that's true. We do Purim, so that's true. It's all true, like Reb Dessler says. Both of them are true. The Torah says it itself. Do Purim but still it's...
Why do you have a problem that there's an argument?
No, I don't. Well, I don't have to, because it's exclusionary. It becomes exclusionary. That's why.
There are debates.
It's such a tzimtzum.
That itself is a tzimtzum, but it's shaloi kipshuta. There's nothing wrong with the fact that there's debates.
That's interesting.
People don't have to be allergic to the fact that there's different opinions. We get allergic to it. We don't have to be allergic to
Burn the
it.
safer over, so it's quite
That's true.
reaction.
That was the issue. They had an allergic reaction to a different opinion. We don't have to have that allergic
And
reaction.
how did Chaim? How was he allowed to go against? He refused to sign the Keren, right?
He also didn't sign the Chaim. Listen, you're asking how can he go against his Rebbe? You have to go against your Rebbe if you feel that there's a different
He
truth.
said that you're not allowed to be Maamar, but you can say, but not.
Yeah. A real Talmud follows his Rebbe because he's looking for emes. It's not personal worship of my party or my opinion or my kehillah or my nusach. He's looking for truth.
But it was 40 years, we said. How could he understand it? That's my question. In other words,
Well, Reb Chaim Volozhiner was a Gaon Olam and a Gaon in Kabbalah as well. You could see from Nefesh HaChaim. And I guess he felt that there was a truth, and he disagreed with his Rebbe on it. And the contrary, this is respect for it. It brings out respect for a teacher.
it was more of a colleague than a colleague at that point.
Yeah, and also a real teacher trains students who can disagree with them.
That's the essence of it.
That's a real teacher. On the contrary, I think it's a compliment for the Vilna Gaon.
How did the Gra react?
If a mother bird trains its chicks to never leave the nest and never fly away, then you're not doing your
To
job.
promote the point, how did the Gra react? Was the Gra alive at that point?
No. The Nefesh HaChaim was printed later. The Gaon passed away Sukkot Tovkuf Nun Ches, 1797. Sukkot, Cholamoyed Sukkot. Reb Chaim Volozhiner was his Talmud Muvak. Reb Chaim Volozhiner only built the yeshiva afterwards.
So they never debated it beforehand.
Privately, I don't know.
So it was afterwards, really.
Yeah, I'm going to say one thing, and that is there's a lot of intellectual dishonesty in this conversation in the Jewish world today. Because it's very hard for people today to digest truth about a lot of things that they're very uncomfortable with. So there's terrible political correctness. You're not going to hear this shir anywhere in the world. Everybody's politically correct in this issue. Because, huh? Well, thank you for the comparison. I'll take it as a compliment. No, he meant it as a compliment. That's what I meant. And maybe I can have that money too. It would also be good. But there's There's nothing wrong with identifying different debates and machlokes. You see, it's like I'm telling you, people have a hard time with intellectual honesty, like to accept that there's certain realities, certain views, certain perspectives, and they could be explored. They could be explored respectfully, gently, appreciating the fact that, as the Gemara puts it, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim. It's a very important idea. Elu ve'elu Elokim Chaim means, as he's put it, with Bali Tristan, this is even before the Vilna Gaon lived in the 1700s. The Arizal passed away in 1572. That's 200 years earlier. The Vilna Gaon passed away 1797. The Arizal passed away 1572. Shin Lamed Beis Hey Av. That's 200 years in between. That's many, many generations. It's not so many generations, but it's a few generations. In the generation after the Arizal, meaning in the 1600s, early 1600s, there was already a debate about this, interpreting the Arizal. Huh? It comes down in many different ways. In Shulchan Aruch, halacha l'maisa, everybody agrees that in a Beis Hakisei, you're not supposed to, you don't daven and you don't say Krishma. That's a question, that's Shulchan Aruch. The way they understood the shitta that Atzmus is everywhere, they said it undermines it, and that's why it's not Yiddishkeit.
Isn't the very fact that we can have differences of opinion prove that there's symptom?
Indeed. All machlokes all debates come from tzimtzum. But that's part of the reality. But tzimtzum is shaloy k'pshuta. That itself.
Saying it's like you can handle the disagreement.
Oh. Yeah.
Have a hard time.
It's known that in the first generations of Chassidus there was a very big machlokes between what's known today as Chassidim and Misnagdim. Today you don't have it, Baruch Hashem, but then you had it. It was a very serious debate and a very serious ideological machlokes, and it translated into very drastic actions, which today is bottled from the Jewish world primarily, but in later years, it was at already a different level. The Balatanya in the beginning suffered terribly from his opponents. You know, he was imprisoned, etc. In his later years, he was vindicated. But then there was a machlokes on him from some of his old chaverim who disagreed with his shitta in Chassidus. I spoke about it, Chavdala Tevis. Rabbi Avram of Kalisk was one of the great tzaddikim. Rabbi Baruchel of Mezhebush, the Rebbe Baruchel. This was already not from the world outside of Chassidus. This was from within Chassidus. The debates and arguments that they had, they were very, very critical of him. And other debates over the generations. There was of a Beis Rebbe that I quoted before. It's a biography of the Balatanya. It was written in the early 1900s by a man named Rabbi Hillman, Rabbi Chaim Meir Hillman. He was a Kapus Chassid. And he had many conversations with grandchildren of the Balatanya from the Tzemach Tzedek's family, so he had a lot of inside information that he transcribed. It's a very interesting book, Beis Rebbe. So he says there in the introduction, a story that, a line, that there was somebody who came to one of the big Rebbes, I don't remember who was, Reb Melech of Lezhenz, the Noam Elimelech, or one of the other great Hasidic masters from the students of the Magen. And he said as follows. He told them that when the Baal Shem Tov came to the world, the Satan went crazy because he was undoing the Tzimtzum. The Tzimtzum is based on the fact that the Ein Sof, the Eir Ein Sof, so to speak, removed itself and created an empty space. And in this empty space, there could be a world, and there could be Klippe, and there could be Yeshus, and all the good things we're used to. And the Baal Shem Tov came, and he was undoing this whole tzimtzum, and they went crazy. So he says, what happened? So what he said. He says, every tzaddik started to pull in a different direction. And as he pulled in a different direction, the oir again. This one pulled the light this way, this one pulled the light this way, and an empty space was created again. He said, that's what machlokes is. He started to pull the oil in different directions. He's pulling the light. I'm pulling the light here. You're pulling the light here, right? different directions. So what happens? So the light gets pulled both opposite directions. There's an empty space in the middle. So he says that the Tzimtzum would be recreated. Not from the Alter Rebbe. I think from the Rebbe Reb Melech or one of the other tzaddikim, not from the Alter Rebbe. He quotes in the introduction about the different arguments and debates.
This related to when Mashiach comes, machlekes, whether you're going to be in a guf or not a guf?
Of course. That's one of the big nafkamenas. There was a big argument in the Rambam and the Ramban. What happens by what does the ultimate destiny of life look like? Right? There were the shit of G'dayli Yisrael who said that not in this world. Mashiach will come, the Beis HaMikdash will live, will be built, life will be great, but then everybody will die. And the ultimate schar is only in Olam Haba, neshamas without gufim. And the logic is very simple. The body can only limit the schar. Why do that? The body has all these agendas that will only limit your sensitivity. The Rambam gives an example. It would be like trying to explain to a body Olam Haba is like explaining to a person who was born blind colors. It's a fascinating example. Explain to a person who was born blind the difference of red and blue. It's hard for us to imagine what that means. It's not that you can't explain it because you don't have the eyes. It's the world of colors doesn't exist in his reality. So it's not like Olam Haba, there'll be better sushi, right? Or you won't have to pay for mortgage or tuition, and your therapist will give you a certificate that you're emotionally healthy. So whatever you have now, you could accelerate then. The Rambam says it's explaining colors to a blind person. In other words, the guf is not capable of comprehending that type of pleasure. And if it wouldn't be a body. So therefore he held that the ultimate schar is in Olam Haba, not in this world. Ultimately everybody dies. That's the ultimate destiny, and it's good because you get the reward here, but then ultimately eternal life is in the higher world, not in this world. That's the Shittas Rambam. In Hilchas Tshuva, in Mesechus Sanhedrin, in Shemona Prakim, that's his Akdama to Perek Chelek. Tchias HaMeisim is a phase. It's a phase. There's resurrection, and then you live a very long, beautiful life without sorrows, Baruch Hashem, and then you die and you receive the ultimate schar. He says so clearly. If you read in Hilchas Tshuva, Barichas, and in Perek Chelek, even more. Why? Poshet. The ultimate reward is spiritual, not physical. The Ramban has a sefer called Shar Agmul. He disagrees with the Rambam. The Ramban says that's not the case. The ultimate schar is Tchias HaMeisim in this world. What's the machlokes? The Rambam tainted that the guf is only going to be a contradiction to the schar. Why limit it? The ultimate schar is Olam Haba. The Gemara says about Olam Haba that Ein Sham Lo Yachila, v'the Maseches Brachas Daf Yud Zayin Lo Yachila, Lo Yishia, Lo Yishina, Tzadikim Yoshim, Atreiseyim, Berosheyim, V'nenin Miziv Hashchina. That's what the Rambam holds. And the Ramban has to explain that Gemara is talking about a phase. That's Olam Haba today. When a person passes away, they have Olam Haba. And that Olam Haba exists also in the future, but after Tchias HaMeisim, eternal reward is here in this world. It's a fascinating argument. The shit of the Baal Shem Tov and his followers was like Shittas Ramban. The Tzemach Tzedek writes somewhere that my grandfather in almost every place sides with the Ramban on this issue. But it has to do very much with this question. Is Olam Hazeh the ultimate place where ultimately everything will come out, or no? It's a temporary phase. Right? If you hold Tzimtzum Shaloik, if you want to connect, the Rambam and the Ramban didn't argue about Tzimtzum, but it's connected. If you hold Tzimtzum Shaloik Pshuta, it's all part of that reality, and not all part of that Hashkafa. If you hold Tzimtzum Kipshuta, if you hold Tzimtzum Shaloik Pshuta, then ultimately, within the world, within the self, within individuality, within the finite koiches, and within the finite journey, if one works hard, as we will continue the Maamar, what that work is, one could see the mashal for the nimshal. In other words, the hester is not a real hester. Since for the teacher it's not a real hester, for the student it's also not a real hester. And that's what Tzimtzum Shaloik Pshuta means, that it's not literal, it's only perceived that way. Perceived doesn't mean it's a delusion. Perceived just means it's a concealment from your perspective, which is real. but it can be dealt with. In other words, the pnimius of the hester is really gilui. The pnimius of the mashal is the nimshal. So therefore, even in oir there was no tzimtzum. That's the chiddush. Back to your question. That's the nekuda here. What's oir? Oir is experience of Ein Sof. Even if you hold there was no tzimtzum in atzmos, like the second shitta, but in oir for sure there was a tzimtzum. You can't experience the Ein Sof in this world. If you experience the Ein Sof in this world, finita, kaput, there's no world anymore. The whole yisoid of this world is that you can't experience the oir. Even if you want to say atzmos is here, shine. But the oir for sure is soif, not Ein Sof, because it went through the tzimtzum, and that's true. Nonetheless, the fourth shit is that even the tzimtzum in oir is not kipshutai. Why? Because even the tzimtzum in oir is only a tzimtzum from our perspective, based on the teacher who had to compress the oir in limited vessels so that we should be able to absorb it. But in those vessels, you have the full infinity, and therefore you could travel back up through oir chayzer and reveal how the mashal is only a mashal for a nimshal, and ultimately go back to the original core and be able to experience. The student, after 40 years, experiences in his kalim the full light of the Rav. That's the chiddush, that the Oir Ein Sof could be experienced ultimately, could be seen, could be experienced. It could be, as he says, gilui pnimiyus v'atzmos Oir Ein Sof, not only chitzonius Oir, but pnimiyus Oir, atzmius Oir, within the world, within the kalim of the world. That means that in the ultimate scheme of things, there could be complete unity, complete integration between heaven and earth, complete integration between God and man. It's not only I connect to God by negating myself, by leaving myself, by going out of koiches, by going out of spheres, because ultimately the mitzias of a person will contradict Ein Sof. You can't have it both ways. So maybe this is all we have now, but it's a compromise. But mitzias is ultimately, let's say not evil, but pretty lousy, pretty stinky thing. That's one way. And again, like I always say, and there's a truth to that. It's not like you have to understand this in order to get to tzimtzum shaloi kipshuta. You have to understand tzimtzum kipshuta also. If not, you have stam tzimtzum. You have to understand it, right? You have to understand the two sides. Like Beis Shammai Beis Hillel would always say first the shit of Beis Shammai, because you can't understand Beis Hillel if you don't understand Beis Shammai. But in the ultimate scheme of things, there could be full achdus, full integration. The person within his or her mitzias, identity, koiches, and individuality can be completely aligned with the truth of Ein Sof. Ultimately, there doesn't have to be disassociation. Ultimately, you don't have to amputate any part of the world or any part of the self. Ultimately, there's no part of the I, the real I, the pnimius of the I, that has to die in order for a real relationship. Ultimately, there's no part of the day or the night that has to be rejected. Ultimately, there's no part of your life or your involvements or your experiences or your relationships that has to be cut out. Ultimately, all of it, completely, holistically, is integrated. Ultimately, that's the truth of Einoid Milvadei that the Baal Shem Tov taught. Einoid Milvadei is a pasuk in Chumash, but what does it mean? Right? Those who say Tzimtzum, they also say Einoid Milvadei. What does Einoid Milvadei mean? Here we have Einoid Milvadei in its radical sense. Einoid Milvadei means that even that which is the furthest away, apparently, it's the epitome of finiteness, the epitome of definition, the epitome of identity, the epitome of gvul, the epitome of self, of ego, of mitzias. It's so far away from the original idea of the teacher, but really, it's a mashal. It's a mashal for a nimshal. It's a mashal for the Ein Sof. So this is all in the world of Oir. All in the world of Oir, some of the ramifications of the shittas. In terms of the ramifications of the first question, atzmos, not atzmos, that's a different sugya. It's not so different, but it's a different discussion.
It'd be interesting to explore how it plays out in like life situations, decision making, relationships.
This expresses itself in everything.
Yeah, but how?
Decision making, therapy, healing, psychology, emotions, the body, the soul, individuality, identity, marriage.
In a certain situation, how would
the relationship between the world and Torah, the relationship between money and Torah, the relationship with success, and bichlal, how you deal with the whole physical world, what eating, drinking, intimacy, sleeping, the whole. Interesting. The Gemara in Sukkah. You could be without an applause as Eichgott. It's fine. I have a therapist for that. Don't worry. I can also applaud myself. I told you, I can applaud myself also. I told you, no, what the Maggid said. Huh? The cover that other people give you should be as precious as the cover you give yourself. I don't mind the applause. I like it. I'm just saying, it's not mukhrach. But what did I? There's a Gemara in Sukkah. The Gemara in Sukkah, Amr Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, that during the days of Simchas Beis HaShe'eva, I like to quote the Gemara Sukkah here. Let me look it up. Oh, there's a Gemara Sukkah, Esther. From all the Gemaras, usually the one you're looking for is never here, even if there's a whole Shas. The one you're looking for. Sometimes when Simtzum Shalakim Pshutai, miracles happen, right? I'll tell you. The Gemara says in Maseches Sukkah, Daf Nun Gimel Amar Aleph, Tanya, Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, K'shayinu Smeichim Simchas Beis HaSheva Lo Ra'inu Shina Beineinu. During Simchas Beis HaSheva, we did not see sleep with our eyes. We didn't sleep. Ketzat, Shar Rishayna, the first hour, let's say sunrise is 6 o'clock, right? Just for simplicity. Shar Rishayna, the first hour, Tamid Shal Shachar. We went to the Beis HaMikdash, the Makar of the carbon Tamid. Rabbi Shimon Chanani was also one of the Leviim, he would sing. Okay? Misham, from there, 7 o'clock in the morning, L'tfilah, you went to David. From Tamid Shal Shachar, you went to David, 6:37, whatever it was. Misham, from there, L'Karbon Musaf. The carbon Musaf at Sukkot, you got to go up to the carbon. They went back to the Beis HaMikdash. Misham, from there, okay, now it's Chveis, 8, 9, L'tfilas HaMusafin. You went to daven Musaf. This is already by Yesheni, you're davening Musaf. Misham, L'Beis HaMedrash. Yeah? So after Tamid Shel Shachar, they danced the whole night, of course. Then it's Tamid Shel Shachar. Then is davening, Shacharus. Then back to carbon Musaf. Then back to Musaf. Now you have to go sit and learn. This is a Tanoim, Rabbi Shimon ben Chananya. There was no monkey. They didn't go to Six Flags, a Chalamoyed, for whatever reason. Take bananas and oranges and hard-boiled eggs to Six Flags and to Ringling Brothers. They went to learn. Okay. Misham, from there, L'Achilush Siyah. We went to eat and drink. Misham, L'Tfilas Mincha, to daven Mincha. Misham, L'Talmud Shabein Arbayim. Misham, Mikan Ve'elech, L'Simchas Beis HaSheva. And then the rest of the night, Simchas Beis HaSheva. So when was the time to sleep? When was the time to sleep? So once at a Sukkos Farbrengen, the Lubavitcher Rebbe spoke about this Gemara. He said, Psapella. He goes everything, and then suddenly Haksa Misham L'Achilush Siyah. From there, he has, Simchas Beis HaSheva is a mitzvah. Big mitzvah. Talmud Shel Shachar, mitzvah min HaTorah. Tefillah is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, or min HaTorah. Carbon Musaf is a mitzvah min HaTorah. Musaf is also a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. Right? Beis Medrash is a mitzvah min HaTorah to learn. Yeah, Mincha, Carbon Tamid. And suddenly in the middle, Misham L'Achilush Siyah, in the same order. So he said, because there's different hashkafas of how you look at eating and drinking. Some people look at eating and drinking as how do you look at Achilush Siyah? One person could look at Achilush Siyah as we're talking about a holy Jew. Achilush Siyah like Nebach. I have to do it. So you do it, Ki'ilu with there's a certain sense of depression. There's a certain sense of dejection. And it's a whole mahalach in life. You'll see also, and this is very deep. I'm not going to be ma'irich. You have to use your imagination a little bit. Over the centuries, there have been two hashkafas of how to live. Some people, and I'm talking about good people, don't about holy people. In Shitta, how it translates today is a different question. I'm not giving now sociological commentary. Everybody can do that on their own. But there's a perspective of those who feel that the more Jewish you are, in many ways, the more sad you are. You know what I mean? A little, I didn't want to use the word depressed. Maybe that's how it comes out by many people today. But the more sad, it's like almost Like joy is already a shtick klippa. Somebody who's happy is like, what are you taking? What is he taking? Well, what is he doing? It's not a Yiddish zach. Yir Shemayim means there's a certain angequetschkeit, there's a certain sadness.
Oh, heavy yoke.
And we understand why. You could lose your Olam Haba any second. It's oil malchus Shemayim. It's not you open your mouth the wrong way, you know where you can end up? Elacht.
I understand that.
Huh? Yeah? And for him, any moment is a big oil on me. It's not. This is a serious world. You can end up in pits and ditches. There's a big yoke. And perhaps if you messed up, there's a seriousness. I'm not talking about now. The way it could translate today is also in neurosis, which is why you see today that Klal Yisrael is yearning for Teres and Baal Shem Tov, because if you're not really connected with the source, you could become neurotic, OCD. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the mucker in a holier place, in a healthier place. It's the world is a bad place. So even if you're happy, because you have to be happy, but you have to be happy. Shittas Baal Shem Tov was the exact opposite. Ayid is besimcha. The way to live is to be happy, always happy, not fake, because he's drinking, because he's an essential happiness, a certain gutmutigkeit, a joy in life, a certain simcha. Why? Because everything is integrated. Because everything is part of it. You're not in a bad place. You're in a good place. Basi legani achaisik. You're in a beautiful place. You have to reveal the beauty, emes. There's weeds. A garden can have weeds and thorns, and you have to weed it out. But it's a beautiful garden. It's a beautiful place. Einoid milvadai. Kirvis alikim mamish. Why are you so depressed? Adarabah. If you're depressed, it means you're not associated with God. On the other, if you hold Tzimtzum Kipshutai, he sent you in a pretty lousy place. Let's get it over with. So you have those who look at Achilu Shia. I tolerate it, but it's ultimately a Yerida. It's a Nefillah. If I can avoid it, is the best thing. You have the other extreme, which is the other extreme practically, but not philosophically, that says, in Beis Medrash, I'm holy. When I eat and I drink, I'm a behemoth. In Shul, I'll scream, Nakdishach, Nekadesh, Keser, but in the business world, I'll backstab whoever I have to. It's really the same shit, it's Tzimtzum Kipshuta. But Mela in the Shul, yeah, over there it's Ein Sof, but in the real world, I'm a behemoth Gasa. The first shit and this shit are opposites, but they're not really opposites. The first shit escapes to heaven, and the second shit runs into the earth. But the two don't work together. So in the first shit, you look at Achilu Shia, Nebach, das ist a Bahamas. The second shit, ich bin jene Bahama. That's who I am. The third shitta is already more benign and says, no, Hashem sent you to eat and drink. And that's why there's halachas of Achilu Shia too. The Chiddush of Simchas Beis HaShe'eva, he said, Simcha Peiritz Geder. That Simcha breaks all the boundaries of Tzimtzum. That Achila and Shia and the carbon tamid have the same Geder. This is an oila. This is a carbon oila. And this is a meal, a lunch. They're not going, P'sta Achila, P'sta Chasana, Pidina Ben, Peidala Taneis, Mela. That was the Chiddush of Simchas Beis HaShe'eva. Simcha Peiritz Geder. Rabbi Shlomo Chanani said what Simchas Beis HaShe'eva accomplished. That Misham Lachilu Shia is tucked in between Tamid, Musaf, Beis Medrash, Mincha. This is Achilu Shia. It's a Zelbe Geder. How can it be the Zelbe Geder? Because it's really all one.
Yeah, but it's in a sukkah though. They ate in a sukkah.
Of course they ate in a sukkah.
So then it was surrounded by it.
Okay, in the Chanami, but it doesn't mention the Nakud of sukkah. He doesn't mention the Nakud. Of course they ate in a sukkah. No, they didn't eat in the Beis HaMikdash. They wouldn't eat in the Beis HaMikdash. He wasn't a kohen eating karbanas. He wasn't. The question is, it says that he didn't sleep. That means he didn't sleep in a sukkah. That's the question. It says he didn't sleep. So the Gemara says, how could you not sleep? So it says that they when they were dancing, they fell asleep on the shoulders. But they weren't dancing in a sukkah. Okay, that's a separate shit that the Tashbet speaks about it. The question of sleeping in the sukkah. But that's a separate sugya. But the hidden akud is misham lachilu shriya. And the reason he could do this is, says because he wasn't sleeping. What sleep? When a person sleeps, what happens? The person sleeps, the head and the feet are on one level. A person sits or stands, the head is on a different level. The head could look up. When you're sleeping, you're flat. Like a behemoth, the head and the rest of the body are on one level. When we sleep, there wasn't a consciousness of sleep. Person could be able to look up. But Mela, when you could see that, then and the Karban Tamid is one thing, it's one akuda. Okay. Steifus. It was worth to wait, Zesto. It was worth to wait. Rabbeinu HaKadosh, my oilam leina nesia filibetz baktana, but the Gemara says that from his table, loy paska, loy tsnoin, v'loy chazeres, moisacham, moisachshamim. He had the best food. Tsnoin, the pshat is, of course, that it wasn't self-centered.
Was he that
Rabbeinu HaKadosh.
Because he never had any
This doesn't. It doesn't mean you're not worried. You're worried, but it's with a simcha. There's a freilichkeit. We have a chashuv participant in our shir. I said once at a shir that a yid has to be besimcha. So somebody wanted to know what's my source, because he grew up saying that you're not allowed to, he grew up knowing that you're not allowed to be besimcha. He wanted to know what my source is. You remember? So I opened up a Rambam Hilchis Lulav. The Rambam says that the simcha person is besimcha is mitzvah gdoilehi, etc. The Rambam says the whole teichich is tachas hashaloy avadatos Hashem alekecha besimcha tuv levav. You did avoid it, but without simcha. But that itself could be a guilt trip. Now you have to be besimcha. That's not simcha. When you make somebody guilty, now I want you to smile. Then they're even less besimcha. Simcha has to come. Simcha is a pnimi, is the kehergish. It's not how much you're smiling. It's where you stand and...
Simcha is a vessel?
Of course you can have an oil and be besimcha. Depends how you look at the oil. Depends how you look at the oil.
Simcha is a vessel or the vessel?
If I'm carrying... Thanks to Shirin. If I'm carrying priceless diamonds, I have an oil. And I don't want to lose it. I'm careful. But I'm very happy. But if I'm carrying a miserable oil, if I have a washing machine here and a washing machine here and a rack on my head, then it's very difficult. But even if I appreciate the oil, but nonetheless I feel like I'm in a very... Just the self is a problem and the world is a problem, so there's just a certain sense of bitterkeit, of meritus, of annoyance, of frustration. Even a good person, it translates sometimes into neurosis. You have to be careful. Neurosis? They don't have neurosis in Hebrew. Shagas. Neurosis v'rit. Huh? Shama kulam kacha, matama. En af echad kacha, and lo yedeh. Neurosis means a person is a neurotic. He's not... In other words, can you take Judaism seriously and be really besimcha? That's the question. Some they don't take it so seriously, so they're besimcha from other things. So for many people, it's very hard to understand, to take Judaism very seriously. The Shidduch Baal Shem Tov was fakert. The more you take Judaism seriously, the more besimcha you're going to be. But very many people have fakert. If you take it really, if you don't take it so seriously, fine. You know, mincha ma'ariv, you get it over with, next. Now I'm free. Especially if you do plag, you finish it off fast, and you have a whole night. Winter months, I'm a chaya, when is plag today? Huh? Ich said the Davosish can plag. Yid told me, he says he does plag, it's like 3:30, yeah? 3:15, 3:30, he finishes might of 3:30, till tomorrow morning he's garnished. 18 hours without religion is schlecht. He was so excited. He won't miss a minyan.
He's looking at it 18 hours without guilt.
No, it depends how he looks at religion. If it's
I understand.
a mental institution, then it's not bad.
But so that's another one. But I'm talking about the Jew who takes a taka very serious. Taka. So there's a certain edenskite. The word is not edenskite. Edenskite is a good thing. Edenskite is a positive. The edenskite means you're a sincere person. But it's a certain like a despondency, a certain despondency. Like you feel ultimately there's something negative, very negative. It's a negativity. Moshe Feinstein once said, somebody asked Rabbi Moshe, why is it that the Lower East Side where he lived, big kehillah flourishing in the beginning, in the 30s and the 40s, and then later, so he said that all the children, they grew up in the houses, and the fathers would always say, so Shevat is ein Yid. It's hard. So he said, the kid said, what do I need a hard life? I don't need a hard life. I want a good life. So he said they were good people. It's a Shevat is ein Yid.
He got fired every week.
Yeah, I understand why. He wasn't blaming them. He was just explaining. If he didn't come to work for Shabbos, there was no work Sunday or Monday either.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.